Go. Hey, Sandra, how are you?
Hey Jo, really good, thank you. Thank
Good.
you.
You're welcome. Hi, Nicole. Welcome. I've just done a brief introduction. This is the book that we're going to be working with, and you're one of the three editors of this book, Living Witchery, the Beginner Witch Guide. And those of us who backed it on Kickstarter have got it in our hot little hands already. Thank you.
Thanks
And
for
then it
being
will
a
be
backer.
my pleasure. Become available into shops. But we've got a special happening this weekend, haven't we? So if anyone who just desperately wants to buy this book, especially after you've talked all about it, we do have the link available on my website, so you can purchase that, and then Sandra will send those out throughout the week for you. So, Sandra, I'm in Lake Macquarie, Awaba. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Brisbane on Turrbal and Yagara country, and I was born in Gubbi Gubbi country, so in Brisbane, or Meanjin is where I live. A lovely, very central Brisbane spot, but it's, leafy and lots of trees and close to Mount Cootha, so it's a beautiful spot to live.
Oh, wow. So do you have lakes nearby, North Brisbane?
We have a big dam.
Oh, okay, that works.
Which is lovely. And of course, we're not too far from the coast. We have the Gold Coast
Yes.
to the south, and we have the beautiful
Yes.
Sunshine Coast to the north. So it is a pretty lovely place to live. Except the big joke is, of course, we Queenslanders just don't do winter very well. So it goes down to 10 degrees, and we're all like wandering, going, oh my God, it's so cold. And I'm one of those people that do that. I just don't enjoy the cold at all.
Oh gosh, I don't think you have to be in Queensland to not like the cold. I don't like the cold either. I always look like, what are you complaining? It's hot. Like, this is how it's meant to be.
Oh, no.
When it's in summertime and then it's cold, it's like, oh God, I hate
it. Give me a summer day any day, I say. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so I've invited you to come along to tell us all about this beautiful book that you've just released. And so I guess this is really, it's over to you, really. I just firstly wanted to just find out what was sort of like the drive or the idea about putting it together. And you've edited it with a couple of other authors as well, and so that's a different process than often what we usually see for a witchcraft book. So I kind of like to know the backgrounds, and then perhaps we can go into what you cover in the book. How's that sound?
Sure. Yeah, sounds lovely. So it wasn't supposed to be such a big book. You know how you start a project and you go, oh, that's just going to be really simple. That's just going to be really easy. And then you go, but I need to add this in, and I need to add this in, and I need to add this. Oh, we need this as well. And then it just grew and grew in a really organic fashion. So really proud of the end result, but never actually envisioned it being quite what it's like. And how it come about, I'm a member of a witch coven in Brisbane, and we are the biggest and the longest running sort of public coven in Queensland. And so we are a teaching coven, and after being involved in running covens for many years, we had started off with all the handwritten notes, and then the typed notes, and then the photocopied notes out of books, and then I typed it up many years ago, and then we created a workbook. And when I say we, Kim Fairminer was heavily involved in editing that. So we had a coven workbook. So when people joined, we had a lovely theoretical content for them to read about coven practices and some activities. And then we thought we needed to update this. It was just starting to look a bit old, and I went, well, I've published a few books, let's make it into a book. So that sounds really good, doesn't it, in theory, because we've got all these
it's like
workbook, and
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. So stuck it all into a new Word document, and then we went, there's gaps, there's a gap. We've been blessed to have people that are very good herbalists, and they teach, herbs, but we didn't actually have any good written content. And crystals, for example, we're not really crystal heavy. I'd much prefer to pick up a beautiful rock beside a road rather than buy a crystal. That's just me. So we didn't actually have a lot of content on crystals and rocks. So we invited a couple of people that are near and dear to us to write those chapters. And then we went, oh, we're missing a chapter on this, and we're missing a chapter on this. And then it just got bigger and bigger and better, I will say.
Yeah.
But the intention was is we wanted, really good Coven teaching materials in one spot. But we couldn't stop there, because then we saw that there was a need or a hunger from new people to have some relevant modern day witchcraft information that provided not a million different options. It provided a narrow range of options, which were options we were used to using within our Coven. And also, the beauty of this book is it's independently published. So we went, let's sort of put an Australian slant on it, rather than worrying about global, markets, but let's write it for us, being Australian witches. So that's how it created, from a whole lot of pages into a book, and just we kept on adding and finding new ideas and finding new topics, and expanded it. And one of the really significant things that we did include is, look at this little note popping up. Oh, thank you.
I know, it's cool, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt you there, but just to add to what you're saying, like Bex just said that she's ordered her copy, and she has. I got it the other day, and looks forward to reading it. And we need more Australian-focused witchery books. And so, it's come at a really good time, because people are asking for it. There are a few out there. I've been carrying them for a few years, but it's just fabulous to be able to add to the the range that you can choose. And I think what you're saying there is this is really specific to the way you and your Coven, open teaching Coven there in Queensland, have been working, and that'll provide an insight for people who may not live in that area and sort of think, I wonder if there are differences to working, say, in Adelaide or in Western Australia or in Melbourne or Sydney, and country Australia and not city Australia. Do you know what I mean? So that's interesting that you've put, I was taken by that. So you, rather than sort of leaving it broadly open, you've helped guide people by just making a few options on what they could do.
Because I think people start, and there's so many different ways. People are told so many different things, and there's no one approach to this. There's no one perfect way. We know that, but this is like a smaller range of ways that we use. But also we've tried to allow the flexibility of individual practice as well, because we're all pretty individualistic people, when we follow this path, or our different paths as well. One really important addition that we did add in is we invited our most wonderful Aboriginal person who lives in Victoria to contribute to the book, because most of us who contributed are pretty white. I mean, like white appearing, and we felt it was important to have the voice of a person of colour, an Aboriginal person, to be embedded within the book. So we're actually extraordinarily grateful for a person I'd never actually met this wonderful person. I've seen them online and actually said, hey, I know this sounds really weird, but would you like to write some chapters? And she did just such a magnificent job, and I'm so humbled to actually be able to have her chapters in the book, because I think they're utterly amazing.
I do too. I think I'm looking for her name. It doesn't seem to
Chadrick.
be.
It is Sloan.
She does the first.
It is a pseudonym. But that's what they preferred to use.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So Chadrick Sloan, she does the first. Has the first chapter, Reconciling Witchcraft, and is she the astronomer as well?
Yes, she's the she is the Indigenous astronomer as well, the sky yarn, because she we sort of said, would you be willing to write a chapter about how witches can engage with sensitivity and cultural awareness You know, what advice would you like to provide us? Because we feel this is something really important. And then she said, hey, I've got all this other stuff too. And we went, oh, yes, please. Whatever you can give us. Yeah. So, no, it was pretty magnificent. Yeah.
It's amazing. I guess it just takes that first step of connecting, doesn't it? Make the connection, and then more of that stuff is able to come out. You might have been ready to publish that in some way, or maybe not, and it just takes an opportunity, doesn't it, to make that happen. So I'm just going to kind of like go a little bit. I can't see that the table of contents. I often find that's a good way to actually take a conversation through. But witchcraft in Australia, reconciling witchcraft, which is her at Chadrick's chapter, labels, terms, and concepts. They were some of the things that we talked about in the Baby Witch class the other day, actually. Just really introductory terms to sort of, so this has got them in good concrete form, yeah? And covens and study groups. So I guess they're things I get asked about a lot is, how do I find a coven? What would you say to someone when they say, how do I find a coven?
Okay, usually I actually say to people, don't worry about it, because to be really honest, there's not a lot of covens around, and not all covens are suitable for all people, and not all people are suitable for established covens, and that's just the way it is. But what I really recommend to people, and you know that's actually in the book, is create a study group. Join a study group. Get out and do things with people. Get out from behind the computer. Meet people face to face. Yes, it's confronting, but it's just honestly the best way. And you know, if you find one person that you vibe with, or two people, you know, that you can form your own study group. You can form your own group. You can, you know, experiment. You can learn. You can experience what it's like to work with other people. So generally I go, if it's really important to you, you know, there are ways to join covens and find covens, but overall I go, no, just joining in events, you know, do things like this, find out where people are locally to you, and meet up. Say, hey, I'm, you know, heading for a coffee in this venue, in this coffee shop. Would you like to come along? We can talk about witchy stuff. So it's really putting yourself out there and being courageous and meeting people.
Yes, I remember when I was first exploring a witchcraft path, and we were living in southern Sydney, and I discovered the Spheres of Light group, and they were based in Sutherland, southern Sydney, and they had this fabulous non-confronting coffee meet every month. And I just started going to that because I didn't really know much. I was busy with work and, you know, my children and things, but I just wanted to connect with people who, you know, thought things like I might think and were a bit more knowledgeable, way more knowledgeable about it than me. But, you know, they didn't look at me like I was weird or something because I'd talk about, you know, some concepts or ideas and that. It was just really lovely just to have coffee and cake with these ladies and a few men too, once a month, you know, on a Sunday once a month. And what I also noticed that was we were also connected on the internet as well. We never had problems in our internet group, and I always believed it was because we met face to face. So we were friends in real life, or we were acquaintances in real life, which actually had a good influence on the way we treated each other online as well. So yeah, taking that step to meet face to face, even with a few people, is a really good step to developing that strength, I guess, or that confidence and shared relationship of some sort on a pagan path. Yeah. The end.
All right. No, I agree. Yeah, but there are, so I suppose, you know, leads into, you know, if you do want to join a coven, you need to get out there and you need to have people see you and them see you. Some covens have outer courts where they're more chill social events where people can come along. I know with our coven, we sometimes spot people and go, that could be coven material, but we have a pretty robust application process because we keep people, the number of people limited to 13 because we like to have a small number of people for group dynamics, but not everyone is cut out for coven life, so I personally find it the most amazing thing, and the sense of community and the trials and tribulations and the highs and the lows and the ability to do rituals with other people is fantastic. But there's people that actually join online covens, and that works for them too. Particularly, I suppose Australia is so vast and distance is a little difficult sometimes. And if you're living in a little tiny country town,
the chances of finding someone who's interested are pretty limited.
That's when you head to your local bookshop and you sort of ask questions. A local sort of new age bookshop. I mean,
if you're lucky, yes.
If you're lucky, or go to the next local town. But I just say to people, just get out, just meet people. Maybe the first 6 people you meet may not be a cup of tea, but the 7th person is. So it's just being really bold and courageous. So that's my perspective, anyways.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So your next sort of section talks about fundamentals and starting points. So you cover ethics, which is awesome, meditation, the inner planes, spirit guides, energy sensing, auras and chakras, grounding, centering and protection, reincarnation and coming out of the broom closet. So they're great starting points, and I guess those starting points are really important for knowing where the group is coming from, for example, or where you're coming from, so that there's a context there for the learning from there on, right?
Yeah, and these are the things that we feel that witches should have an understanding of. I think a lot of young witches do learn a lot of material through online videos, TikToks, and sometimes some aspects are really well presented and other times there's gaps. So we've gone, what do we think are the main foundations that people need to build their practice? Firm believers of actually having the basics and the foundation really strong, and then you can build on that. And sometimes I actually believe, when we talk about advanced practice, it's actually just the basics done really, really well. So look, people might argue and go, maybe they don't think these are the foundations, but to me they are. They're pretty significant, and they help create a common language among people. So so that's sort of, we've sort of built it from from the ground up. We're trying to build this book, but you can actually pop in anywhere and read any bits if you really want to.
I agree. You could.
And I'm sure, like most people, would go straight to the magic and spell work, but I think we actually give a warning and going, have you read the other stuff beforehand? Don't just read the stuff.
Yes, Mum.
But it's human nature. I mean, honestly, if I was picking up a book, I always go, well, what's the most interesting thing? And I'm just going to start on that now. 100%. So you can dip in. But we're trying to sort of, build it from the ground up, really. And clearly as possible. I suppose that's the thing. We're trying to take a lot of jargon out. It is written, I think, all right, my personal thing, I go, communication is about speaking so that other people understand what you're saying and that you try to get what they're saying. I believe sometimes people say things and they sound really amazing, and then you go, but there's actually no meaning. I don't actually understand what you're talking about. So I think one of the main things about the book is trying to keep it really, clean and simple and understandable. So try to avoid the mystical overlays to actually get to the guts of things, which I like. I like the mystical stuff, but I think let them speak clearly, keep it simple and keep it understandable so that people get it.
Yes. Beck has made another comment. I'll show it to you, Sandra, so you can see. So Beck says that she watches a lot of witch TikToks and it's called Witch Talk, which you might have found too. And through that, found an Aussie witch community on Discord, which is an online chat app. So that's another path to take as well, I suppose, particularly if you're not really sure who around you might be interested as well. So yeah, sort of but I guess too that would take a process of questioning everything that you're watching and seeing what resonates and following a little bit of a Alice in Wonderland path.
Yeah. I sort of am on a couple of Discord groups, and yeah, they're massive, but there's so much information that I suppose they're not my thing. I must admit, it's my age group. I like my Facebook, but I do Discord, and I've discovered the bizarrity of TikTok. But I must admit, generally I watch the funny animals more than the witch talk, and like people riding like horses bareback. So like I'm obviously a real dag here. Sure, and I was lucky to find a lot of sensible witches. Yeah, that's a really good find, because sometimes it seems that some of the witch talkers seem to want to manufacture drama because it gets them views and brings people in, and you go, well, it's not my thing. I'm not here for drama. You know, I think there's so much drama
nice, peaceful,
in life. I try to keep my witchcraft, pretty, on track and focused. Yeah. But it is, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff and a fascinating way of learning.
So back to our kind of old ways.
Yeah, old ways, yes.
But grounded ways, other grounded ways. That's right, other grounded ways. So yeah, foundations, building your practice. So you're talking about, so I'll just run quickly, a book of shadows, your personal altar, correspondences, elements and elementals. So the witch's tools, the wheel of the year in the Southern Hemisphere, which I think now is being talked about lots more than it ever was. It might just be because that's what I'm looking for and I'm connecting with people who are talking about that, but that's definitely coming up a lot more now. Deity and how to connect with the patron deity. So I'm so glad I didn't see this before I wrote my class, because I would have thought it would have sounded like I'd pinched everything out of your book.
No, the foundations are the foundations. This is this is what the basics is. It's nothing really earth-shatteringly new, but it's important to have all of the aspects. So
in the one spot.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's good. And then we've got facets, so witchery lore, and this is where you've got sky yarning, Indigenous astronomy. So I will actually probably jump a couple of the initial chapters and go straight to that one, because I'm a bit interested, quite interested in what that means. And do you want to give a little summary about what that means, or what? Yeah. Indigenous astronomy.
Oh, this was written by Sandra, and this was like our bonus chapter, if you like, because we weren't expecting, and it appreciates it. So, she talks about the perspective of Indigenous people and the relationship. Sorry, this is my really quick snapshot. The relationship between, the sky, which is actually part of the environment. It's not like we have the land and then it's just stuff up there, but the interconnectedness, of the sky and the earth and the seasons. What I love, there's so many practical things in this book, including this. She talks about the stargazing may include activities such as pulling all-nighters and rising from your warm slumbers in winter to observe the sky before the sun breaches the eastern horizon. Don't forget to take notes in your journal of the constellations that you are drawn to. The night sky is enchanting, and many times I've not finished my plan notes or sketch of a star grouping because I'm fully caught up in the moment. In preparation, you may like to set time aside for reflection and journaling after the stargazing moment. Allow yourself to be fully present in the stargazing, as it can be truly wonderful and moving. So, that's just wonderful, practical, sensible advice that anyone can use and help. It'll help them learn. And it's one thing we didn't do. One thing I think's a little bit different is a lot of new witchcraft books, they include practical exercises, but that's about as in depth as it gets. We don't actually have or do all these exercises at the end of the chapter, because I know that I never used to do all the exercises at the end of each chapter.
I only do exercises if I'm in class and there was homework for the next week.
Yeah. So I admire all the people that write all those activities at the end of each chapter and the people that do them, but that's not my gig. So I love how, you know, that's actually the last paragraph of her chapter, and it's just like wise, and it's simple, and it's very gentle. So you know, that's very typical, you know, I think of how we've managed to roll.
So you've managed to roll the practical things in with the writing about what to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Not rather than having a tick list, because I must admit, the last thing I wanted was a cookbook. You know, I didn't want to do this. You know, I just wanted something that hopefully people can read. You know, there's enough practical things in, but there's reading things as well. So,
yeah.
The other, you mentioned about the Wheel of the Year, and I suppose that's worth a bit of a conversation in the Southern Hemisphere. It's going to be very topical. And I think that leads into the conversation that often comes up between witches about, you know, which way do we work in a circle? Do we work that way? Do we work that way? You know, what do we do when we put a Northern Hemisphere tradition into a Southern Hemisphere context? So we do touch on that, you know, lightly. So you can't really. It's funny, isn't it? This screen is very white. So we also
photos for later. So just refer what you want to refer to, and I'll take photos later and share them afterwards.
Worries.
Oh yes, of course. Bring that forward a bit. You can see that a bit closer.
Sorry, it's like backwards and forwards, like a mirror thing.
There we go. Perfect. Can see it.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, and just if you do order through Jo's site, we'll pop one of these, and it's an A4 little art card, Wheel of the Year. So you get one of those if you order through Jo's site.
There you go, Beck. You'll get one of those.
So it is really important to us, and I think the challenge is we see many new people might see the Wheel of the Year as being this very comprehensive, cohesive system, and it's like set in stone, and it's actually absolutely not. There's so many myth cycles woven through the Wheel of the Year. Sorry, will I just take a bit step back? Did you talk about Wheel of the Year in your baby witch class?
We touched on it a bit, yes, but not everyone here came along to that. So the Wheel of the Year basically talks about the different seasons and how they move through the solar, the correspondence between the solar seasons and the moon cycles. Yeah.
So essentially, you know, how a lot of modern pagans practice is we have the solstices, which is like the winter, and the summer solstice, which longest day, longest night, and we have the equinoxes. Sorry, and really I'm putting my hands that way. It doesn't really matter. It's just like easier to visualize. And the equinoxes, which are the days and nights are of equal length, and between each of those, we have the cross-quarter days. So all these festivities are about six weeks apart through the cycle of the year. So we call this the Wheel of the Year. And it's not one thing. You know, there's a lot of people over the years that added to it. There's a lot of different myth cycles through it. But despite all of that, it's actually a really wonderful way to engage with other pagans, because we go, you know, it's winter solstice. What are we going to do? How are we going to celebrate this season? How are we going to connect with the changing seasons of the land? What activities are we going to do? What are we going to do with our family? What internal changes are we going to reflect on and celebrate or consider? So it's a really fantastic concept.
Framework.
Framework.
It's a framework for celebration, but also thinking and planning and I guess meditation too. You're meditating on different, you know, you're thinking through your own practice and things that you've done and what could be changed and what different you could do, things that you could do differently to bring about new, depending on the different cycles throughout the year.
So it is such a valuable, you know, framework for, you know, new witches to consider, knowing full well that it's not you can't transpose it exactly into Australia or the Southern Hemisphere. And, we need to flip it so that, in December, that's actually our summer solstice, not, we don't celebrate winter in the middle of summer, and vice versa. So that is one thing that we do need to contextualise to our locality. But it's a really important, fundamental building block, I think, of people's practice.
But I think too, the Wheel of the Year could almost, not to add an element of confusion, but just an element of flexibility, is that it could almost be different in different parts of Australia, because the reality is that, in different zones in our country, we have different types of seasons. So, far north, Queensland and Northern Territory and Western Australia, that they have essentially 2 seasons with, a bit of transition in between, whereas much more south, like Tasmania or Southern Victoria, there, even to Canberra, there are, distinct 4 seasons, and us in the middle with a bit of temperate. We're a bit temperate here, and you're probably a bit tropical the way you are, and, the seasons look a little bit differently. So I guess there's that. And I think this is what happens with any spirituality on the Australian, the Great Southern Land, the continent, is that it does undergo change, because the land itself works and changes that spirituality, because it has its constancy. It's the spirituality that has to work with what's available here on the land that it's on, that it's interacting.
So, and it's absolutely a case of looking at what's around you, looking at the trees and looking at the animals, looking at the temperatures. So it's very much it's an external and an internal cycle, and needs to be considered where, what's happening here, rather than pretending it's like we're celebrating Yule and it's in the middle of the summer. So I don't think many people do that. But the other thing I think that mixes people up sometimes is, now there's a lot of Halloween activities that happen at the end of October, and you'll often see the pagans going, "Oh my God, don't you understand? It's Beltane at the end of October. How dare you practice Halloween? Samhain is it this?" Sorry, and I love that, and it does mess with your head a bit. But I just go, why not do both? Like take the kids trick or treating and enjoy it.
Or stock up for next year.
And do the Beltane thing. So it don't be so hard and fast about these things, because it's not a perfect framework. It's not a perfect system. So look what's happening around you, and don't be too rigid. My advice. Yeah.
A bit too rigid, absolutely. The life's too short to being too rigid.
Oh yeah.
Drama for unnecessary. So other witchery laws. So we've got the magic of time. So that's where I suppose you talk a little bit more about the moons.
That's Kim's chapter. Kim is Fairminer. She is a professional astrologer, and just a little secret between us: don't talk to her about blue moons. Okay? They no such thing in astrology as a blue moon. And every time the blue moon things come up, or the supermoon, she just goes, "Oh my God." No, sorry, Kim, wherever you are. Yeah. Sorry, my beautiful.
We're not sending you the link.
There she is. There you go. She made me lose my backdrop. Yeah, sorry, Kim, I didn't mean to make joke. But no, Kim is absolutely a professional astrologer. She has years and years and years and years and years of study behind her. So, so she brings that amazing depth of knowledge to her chapter. And I will admit, it was like, Kim, that's too advanced for the new people. And I'm not an astrologer. My brain just doesn't work like that. So she just had to prune so much of her knowledge to, just take it back to the, beginner level. But so that chapter was written by her, so it's fantastic.
Wow. You might be inspired to do something more in depth now that she's been able to pair it back to an introductory style chapter.
Yeah, and she runs courses, face-to-face course and online course. So she's extraordinarily good and does. No, so when I say professional, that's how she actually earns her living. So she's very good. She knows her stuff. Yeah.
You've got a chapter here called Bringing Magic into Everyday Life and Travel Magic. What's travel magic?
Oh, this is written by Scarlett, who's the most amazing practical, like witch. She does all this stuff, and she's very crafty. I'm not crafty, so I was like, what kind of crafty stuff? So one thing she talks about in the travel magic is, and this is pretty practical. Whenever she travels, she takes little travel pigs, little, it can be plastic or ceramic little pigs, and it's like it helps you magically cross borders between different countries. There's a bit of history associated. So I just thought it was a bit of a call out, something a little bit unusual that people may not do.
Definitely.
Yeah. So there's lots of little practical tips and everyday activities, and travel magic I thought was a nice little thing to focus on.
So that's a bit cool. Sorry, I was just having pictures of of sticking travel pigs on my dashboard.
Why not?
I know, right?
Why not?
I will read the chapter first to find out what it's all about first before I just leap into doing whatever. So you talk about a witch's apothecary. So the basics.
Yeah, that's written by a lot of the chapters in the Witchery lore are written by guest authors. So the Witches of Apothecary was written by the most amazing Cheryl Kian, who lives on an organic farm outside of Yamba. So she does, and that's the thing I think we've tried to do. We've asked for guest chapters from people that do this stuff. They're not armchair people. They're people that years of experience behind doing these practical things. So she is absolutely amazing. And so she has written about, like working with the soil and the plants and the herbs, and has very kindly given us a few recipes as well for spellwork using herbs. But so she once again tremendously experienced, and she if down the track we'd like to do like an advanced practice, so she'd be another person that would open up this new world to people about herb lore and herb magic. So so she's quite amazing. And as I said, she walks the talk and she talks the talk, and she just lives this amazing life on organic farm, and got a distillery. She's got all the weird pots and things that makes things. Sorry, that's really vague, isn't it?
Yeah, cool. Oh wow, that's a bit fancy, isn't it? Technical.
Yeah. A bit technical for me. Yeah.
So crystals and earth magic, you were mentioning that before. You've got a cool one named here. I've been hexed or cursed. Please help.
Awesome. That's something that often comes up, and it's a really common question. People will go, I think I've been cursed, I think I've been hexed. So it just provides a little bit of a common sense approach to that. I think, sorry, now that I've lost my beautiful backdrop, my lighting's going to be all weird, but
that's all right.
So just to shortcut here, like when you talk about cursing or hexing, it usually is a deliberate act by someone that actually knows how to work magic and does it deliberately. And that's pretty rare. On the other hand, I think people can psychic attack you, and that can be done. And I've experienced that through people who may not be magic at all, magical practitioners, but have a lot of emotion. But so it just provides, pretty basic responses, even if you maybe haven't been hexed or cursed. How do you sort of bolster that, your shielding and your protection, so that you feel sort of magically safe. So that's what that is. It's pretty look, and once again, this is a beginner book. There's a whole raft of other activities that you could do, but these are pretty strong fundamental activities.
That's great. Perfect. And straight after that is energetic cleansing for space and smoke cleansing. So that's something that came up in the class that I was doing the other day was, about how do you energetically cleanse a space before you do your working, and what are some processes there. So that's good to have that in there. You've got a section on divination and divination tools.
Yeah, that was a chapter with my name on it that I contributed as an author. it's a particular passion of mine. And once again, a lot of these topics, you start off and there's so much more you could write, isn't there? Like books and books and books have been written about each of these topics alone. So, so that's just a bit of an overview on divination, what it is and how does it work, and a few key tools, but very, very brief overview, really.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so then festivals, rituals and ceremonies. So crafting a solitary or a small group ritual, the altar, public or large group rituals, and walking the wheel of the year. So that's the practice of the celebration of the different festivals and important points throughout the wheel of the year.
Yeah. And one thing that I personally find quite lovely in walking the wheel of the year, this is one of our guest authors who actually has written quite unique rituals about activities you can do. So it's sort of a little bit different from the normal, this is what you do at this time of year, but she talks about going for a walk beside a cliff, for example, with striations in the cliff, and considering your ancestral ties. So, and that's just a little bit of a different take on the wheel of the year. Yes, some of them are a little bit Brisbane focused, when we talk about jacarandas, but you can use other local blossoms in that particular ritual. So that was sort of significant, because it encourages people to once again get out from behind the book, behind the computer, and actually get out and walk the earth and discover your local environments and learn about those. So so that, I think they're quite lovely, those rituals in there.
Cool. Then the next section is on focus, magic and spell work. And so you work through tips and techniques for magic, raising energy, correspondences. So we spent a little bit of time the other day talking about correspondences. So I'm heartened to see that you've got lots of tables and ways of relating one type of thing to another, which is the essence of correspondences, and being able to gather the sorts of things that help to energetically enhance the work that you're doing.
And I think they're the foundations, aren't they, really? Because an understanding of the elements, I think, is really important, and how do things work together. And look, some of that system is like the system we use, but there's flexibility. And once again, we encourage people to work through this. And I will be really clear, and I think there's even a line in there. Some people go, it's just my intuition. Okay. That is okay. But witchcraft is not just about intuition, according to the world as I see it. Intuition is absolutely important, but it's not everything. Intent isn't everything. There's a whole lot of other things in the mundane and magical world that sometimes might bear a little bit further study, rather than going, my gut tells me this. Because, for example, 30 years ago, my gut might have told me one thing and I would have gone, yes, that's absolutely the truth. But then 10 years down the track, I might learn something new and I go, actually, that really wasn't right. I've learned something else. I've learned other things. So perceptions change, perspectives change, and sometimes it's good to balance our intuitions with other facets or triangulations. Yes. And I suppose one thing I'm quite an advocate of is balancing your magical work and actually seeing the impact in the real world. Is it real? Because magic actually is real. That's why we do it. But how do we know it works? So if we consider and go, my intuition tell me it works, well, yes, that's the way. But what are the other things you can see? What can you see or touch or taste, or what impact does it have on people or creatures? And even that might be your perception filter changes slightly through the magic. But I think we need to look for, the impacts, and the ripple effects from what we do. Sorry, that's a bit lectury, but that's why I think it's important to have some theoretical knowledge as well as that intuitive, earthy gut knowledge feeling. So I think we need both.
That's the I think that's the triangulation, isn't it? It's the intuitive, it's the research, it's the, what has gone before, and trialing it, practicing it, and observing the results. And that's where your Book of Shadows or your journal or your grimoire or whatever you want to call it, you call it the Book of Shadows in here, but that's where that is so important, because that journals, that documents that process of learning, where you got your information from, how you applied it, what result you received, or what result you got and observed, and then how you might do it differently next time, or you might look back at it and go, okay, well, I'll try it this way, and add something new that you've learned to it when you want to do that sort of thing again. Or so
absolutely,
that documenting process is so important.
It is, because we don't know everything straight away, and sometimes we actually realize the impact of something that we did or something that we said, which is actually pretty amazing. And even this is actually Monday, but I think it's pretty cool, is on Facebook we get these what happened on this day, 6 years ago, and I love that. I think it's really, I'm going, wow, I can see a pattern here.
Yes. And you look and you do, and you compare what you knew then and what was going on in your life then, and so, oh, that's interesting, this is coming up again, or wow, I've done so much since that time, I hardly recognize that person in that context also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about ripples, I just had this thought. If you're not writing down what you're working with or working on, and you go to sort of like even later sort of go, I hadn't realized that this particular working had such an impact, the further on down the line or further out, there's no way to document that even either. And I think that is a useful aspect of documenting what you're working on at the time that you're doing, so that later, if you find more information about how that result played out, because some things do take a long time to play out.
They do.
Not everything is instant. Unlike in Harry Potter and Charmed and all of the other things.
God, that'd be cool, wouldn't it, hey? Yeah.
I don't know. But, having a place where you can sort of go, oh, that's right, I remember working on that, 6 years ago. Go back and find it, and how interesting this is now, and you can sort of edit it, not edit it, but add, what's happening now as a result of the work that you did all that time ago.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And I think that, and also what I, love about what you're saying is encouraging people to actually experiment. I think now at one stage, there was all this cautions about, how much you could do this, and people weren't experimenting. They sort of, I think maybe, people have been too effective about saying the terrible impacts, and we open a portal into the other worlds. But
I get that.
Bottom line is, get out there and do the things, and you don't actually have to be perfect before you do them. You only achieve experience by getting things wrong and completely stuffing up sometimes. That's sometimes how we learn best, isn't it? Unfortunately.
Totally. That's it. Shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that.
No. Hey, I always would have more reason to have my journal stationary attic. Good on you, Beck. Yeah.
That's it. You're not alone there. I think there are many people who love to have their stationary journal.
I know. I love it. I love my journals. Yeah.
So amulets, talismans, charm bags, spell boxes, sweetening up spells, freezer spells. I know what a freezer is.
I sort of had to add that in. It's sort of like everyone talks about freezer, but yeah. So no, I used to do these, years ago as well. So this is not anything new, but they seem to be really super popular. I will say it's one thing though. I remember a witch years ago used to have so many little people in her freezer. It was getting a bit difficult to stick anything in. So, not me. Sorry, this is not a friend. This is literally a friend. It's not me. I sort of have a different perspective. Yeah, and I think sometimes people. I think there's a challenge that sometimes people are just too quick. I'm just going to do a freezer spell and not consider. this like goes back, you know, their immediate intuition is to do a freezer spell, but there's just so much more when you actually pull things apart. There's so many other layers to what you're experiencing, how you're experiencing, what the other person might be happening. So is a freezer spell really the best option? You know, have you done the real life?
A cautionary chapter then, is it?
What's it? Sorry? What?
It's a cautionary chapter about freezer spells.
No. I think overall there's little cautionary gems, you know, in there. Yeah, you know, it's just my personal perspective. You know, I rarely actually do sort of spell work like that. You know, I sort of go, most people are just human and can just stuff up. And most of the time having a good conversation with someone actually fixes a lot more than spell work. That's my perspective. But in the front, in the beginner witch reality check, you know, one thing that I think we felt quite strongly about was don't automatically assume a spell is needed every time you feel annoyed, frustrated, or ill.
Yeah.
So it's a case of sitting back and there is the list in there, you know, before you do spell work, these are some of the things that you should actually consider. And that process, I think, is really important. And you can learn a lot through going through that process. And, you know, one example is, you know, is actually doing a divinatory reading using oracle cards or tarot cards to actually work out, is a spell actually really warranted in this situation, or is there something else that I'm not immediately seeing? But anyways, there's a few spells in there for people who'd like to use them. Sorry, that's circling back there.
No, that's good. That's good. You talk about the circle coven tradition. So what is the circle coven and preparing for ritual, circle coven ritual and processes there. And that's the last section there. So the circle coven is the coven is your teaching coven, or the coven that you're involved with. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So these are a few more specifics. You know, a lot of the book is a lot more gentler. Being in a coven such as ours, and covens are different. You know, all covens are different. They have their own vibe. They have how they work. There's no one way to have a coven.
And their purpose too. Different covens have different purposes and different platforms and different reasons for being. Yeah.
So, but how our sort of coven works, it's quite, you know, specific in how we perform rituals that we thought really wasn't appropriate in a general beginner book to actually dictate exactly, you know, how we do things. So we stuck that at the back, you know, for people who are interested in how we do our formal group rituals. You know, but quite frankly, a ritual can be just as simple as, you know, I pick up a stick on the ground, I draw a circle around myself, and that's a ritual, you know. But if you want to sort of learn a bit more about how a formal group performs, and we have quite, you know, like, what am I trying to say? You know, specific ways of doing things. It's not everyone's gig, and that's completely okay. That's our gig, not everyone's gig. But we thought if people would like to read about a few more specifics, it's in there, but not dictating about this is the only way to do things.
I think that's a good way to discern what works for you, is to at least have some examples of the way one particular group works, and then it becomes like a, you know, if you meet other people who work in a different way, you can start to go, oh, okay, comparing, contrasting, with none being more better than the other, not that sort of but just sort of like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. This is different in this way. Well, that's the same in this way. I wonder if they're foundational things, whether they're common across all covens or whether they're things that are particular, just happen to be the same. You know, it sort of opens up those conversations, but also those points where you go, okay, well, these things seem to be fundamental to a number of covens. Or the other things might be the things that you experiment with or change or make specific to the group that are in your particular coven, you know, because the personalities would also interact with how a coven works as well.
They do. And when we have new members come in, the dynamics of the coven actually changes. It's never anything static. And that's lovely. That's usually why I love getting new people in, because you go, whoa, all these, like the new perspectives.
And what more can we have?
So it's good because, stagnation is not
it's the death of
healthy.
Any group.
Yeah, that's right. We're organic beings and groups are organic, and you need to, change things. Things should never actually become static. But I think, the point you touched on before, it's like having that curious mind. If you come into anything with a perspective of I say, joyful curiosity, that's a really great perspective to have, rather than go, well, oh my God, they're doing things the wrong way. That's not helpful. It's like, it's more like, wow, I've never seen that before. Why are you doing that? What's the reasons? I really love to learn more about your practice. And I think it's just such a lovely way to learn and then honour other people's learning, which is all different stages. But being curious is such a great trait.
I think so too. I think in all facets of life, but I think in this sort of style, this way of practicing spirituality, curiosity is fundamental, because why would you walk down the street and notice anything if you weren't curious about it? Why would you notice what plants were flowering or dropping leaves or new buds or anything like that if you weren't curious? Why would you bother, trying to tune in with sentient or living organisms around you if you weren't curious as to who they were and how they interacted with each other, and therefore how you fitted into that. So that curiosity, like you say, is fundamental to any exploring. Yeah. Particularly as paganism, witchcraft in particular, but paganism in general is about connection and exploring and adapting, and none of that's possible without curiosity. How does this work?
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest blocks to curiosity is actually thinking you know it all. You're thinking, and that is a challenge when you get older, because you do think you know it all, but you have to constantly get back into that mindset. Or the other thing is that I think can block curiosity is thinking you know nothing and being really terrified about that. And I think those, from both perspectives, a good helping of humility. Humbleness is actually a really good way to see you through when you meet new people. So curiosity and being a little bit humble, I think, is a great traits when you do actually go and meet people at study groups or open events, and just enjoy it. Reflect on the bad experience. Did I say bad? Oh my God. Respect on the more challenging experiences and still learn from them. But no, I think, witchcraft it's something that we need to enjoy and embrace.
And again, thank you so much for sharing your book with us, and sharing your thoughts and the processes and the contents of the book with us, Sandra. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been such a pleasure, Jo. Thanks for inviting me. It's been great.
Welcome.